Welcome to BioIT World's Trends from the Trenches podcast, your insider's look at the science, technology, and executive trends driving the life sciences. I'm Allison Proffitt, editor at BioIT World. This episode is hosted by Stan Gloss, founder of BioTeam, a life sciences IT consulting company at the intersection of science, data, and technology. Joining Stan today is Anastasia Christianson, Global Head of AI, ML, Analytics, and Data at Pfizer. Christianson will be giving a plenary address later this month at BioIT World, and she gives Stan a sneak peek of how and where Pfizer uses AI. In a word, everywhere. Let's listen in.
Anastasia, it's so nice that you could join me on my podcast today.
So nice to meet you again, Stan. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this. You know, Pfizer has been in the news, and you're recently new to Pfizer. So I'm really looking forward to getting into a little bit about your job and what you're doing. But maybe we can start by having you tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. I'm a scientist by training. I always like to start there because I've always been a scientist, always think like a scientist, and I've always been at the interface between science, data, and technology. So using technology to generate more data, better data, and using technology to make best use of the data for decisions is what makes me tick. I'm blessed with an analytical mind, so always thinking about why something happens, like a disease developing or a therapy working, not working, and how.
Well, your educational background is in?
My undergraduate is in chemistry. My graduate work is in biological chemistry, and my postdoctoral training is in cellular and developmental biology.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about your current role at Pfizer and what you do.
Okay. I'm the head of the global head of artificial intelligence, machine learning, data, and advanced analytics. And I know that's probably the longest title that you've ever heard. Mm-hmm. I sit in the digital organization, and I have responsibility for AI, ML, data across the enterprise, from drug discovery through to commercial.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, that actually sounds like a role in other organizations. They might call that the chief data analytics officer, doing all of that. It sounds like that kind of function.
Yeah, we don't have that title at Pfizer, but effectively that's probably what it is. And it is one of the factors that attracted me actually to the role is, having both the data and the analytics side. So you can't complain about the data not being where it needs to be because you've got responsibility for the data as well as the analytics.
Right. You know, I read a book recently by Jean Ross called Designed for Digital. And in her book, she talks about something called the data backbone, that every organization really needs to have this kind of consistent layer of data that runs underneath all of the things that you do. And it sounds like in your role, you kind of are managing that data backbone that kind of feeds all the analytics going on simultaneously. So you kind of get that nice blend of the data and the analytics, because in the end of the day, it's about getting insight, and you get insight from the analytics. But if the data doesn't work, and then the analytics don't work. So having both under your thing, what challenges do you face when you're trying to manage data across an organization like Pfizer?
It's a very good question. And I have to say, so having joined Pfizer last year, I was impressed by the shape of our data. Is actually in pretty good shape, not as siloed as one might think, but it seems like you never have your data in perfect condition. So our goal has been to ensure that we have fair data, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And we've been doing that kind of function by function initially, while also thinking about it across the enterprise. So again, one of the opportunities that we have is the fact that we're working across the enterprise, and we're not the only ones who are data scientists or AI/ML by any stretch of the imagination. So of course we have embedded data scientists and embedded data engineers and embedded AI experts, and that means that we partner very well and we have partners that can help us to get to where we need to get to.
Well, that's really interesting. When you say across the enterprise, are you looking at, all other areas besides science? When you say is it really across the enterprise?
Absolutely. So from research through to clinical development, to manufacturing and supply chain, to commercial, medical affairs, and not only that, support functions as well. So we support what we call people experience, which is equivalent to human resources in other places, to use the data that's available to understand better colleagues' movements from position to position, for example, to reduce the number of regrettable losses, because we understand more when a colleague might be looking for new opportunities or looking for a stretch opportunity, and so on.
Wow. So that's really interesting, because a lot of times the guests that we've had on the podcast really talk about science, analytics, and all that. We really don't get into manufacturing and other parts of an organization. And I'm curious, from your perspective, how are their needs different across those parts than we typically think of the needs in science?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question in that data is data, and analytics is making use of the data. So it's mostly about understanding the questions. So the questions are different. The data complexity might be a little bit different. But in the end, as long as you have the questions and you can use the data to help answer the questions, the analytical mind works the same way. And a lot of if you look across the organization, and not only at Pfizer, I think generally I remember that from my previous company and the company before that, very much manufacturing space, I think, are probably usually ahead of everybody else in terms of making use of their data, making use of model-based methods and so on, because because they need to, because they are more focused on the quality. They tend to collect higher quality data, and some of the problems that they tackle are definitely amenable to advanced analytics methods. And so we often find that folks in the manufacturing space have higher quality data and use analytics more than you would think.
That's interesting. Are you able to take lessons learned from people who are doing high quality data work in one part of an organization and fork it over to other lessons learned, cross pollination?
Absolutely. That's one of the fun parts of my job, actually. The fact that I'm constantly learning, my team's constantly learning. While we do have data scientists and AI experts or data engineer experts who are scientists or who have commercial understanding, who have experience with manufacturing. So we have those expertise, but we're always looking at the learning from one part of the organization to another part of the organization. And that's what I really enjoy about this role.
So how do you think your scientific background, one, helps you in these areas? And do people kind of look at you strange from like a manufacturing standpoint and go, wait a second, you're a scientist. Like, what do you know about this?
Probably less from manufacturing and more from commercial, I think, because I am a scientist. But in general, people, unless I've done a recent introduction like I just did here, people kind of forget what your background is and assume you're more of a data geek or an analytics geek or a technology geek. So they look at you more from that perspective. And especially the scientists get really surprised when you ask a question that really demonstrates that you understood the science of what you're trying to do. So the same for manufacturing, I guess, as well. And I haven't quite gotten up the learning curve enough on the commercial side to ask the most intelligent questions from a commercial perspective, but I'm getting there. I'm getting that experience.
Well, that just takes time. So Pfizer was, obviously we all know Pfizer was at the center of a lot of what was going on during the COVID crisis, and you weren't necessarily there at the peak of all the what was going on, but from I'm curious what Pfizer learned about the lessons learned that they learned about data from the pandemic that they are using these days that they could carry forward that they didn't understand until the pandemic.
Yeah, as you said, I wasn't there during that time. So what I can speak to is more from the perspective of the lessons learned that we take, what we discuss within my team, because my team obviously was here. I think the biggest lesson learned was agility, like how fast you can work through things and how data and technology can enable you to work faster. So how to quickly identify and eliminate obstacles and work at pace. And in fact, we have many Lightspeed programs now. The first one, I think, was the COVID vaccine, if I'm not mistaken. And we have many other follow-on programs now that we call Lightspeed, where the focus is to get to the end results that we're looking for as quickly as possible. And I do believe that the mindset makes a big difference, just to be thinking about how to remove obstacles and when you need to bring others in, how to work in a larger team, a high-performing team, and really being prepared for anything, using all relevant data. So a lot of the AI capabilities, acceleration of adoption of AI happened during the pandemic when we were looking to use our data most effectively and simulate what the next step is. Developing the vaccine was one of them. Also looking at the coating on the vaccine, the lipid layer on the vaccine, actually to optimize it so that you have less reactions. A lot of that work was done through AI and ML to actually get to the final product.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the story of Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile, and how long it took to break that 4-minute mile. But as soon as the 4-minute mile was broken, it was broken again in the next night. Within a year, it was broken again. So it's amazing once organizations can see that something can be done, that all of a sudden it paves the way for allowing it to be done at scale or even faster than scale than before.
Absolutely. That's a really good analogy.
So how would you kind of characterize, I mean, we had, I did an article with Bill Lester a while ago, a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and we talked about Pfizer's digital strategy. How has that strategy evolved over time? And really, what is the digital strategy? Because I know that was a big topic at Pfizer.
Well, I love this question, actually, because we don't have a digital strategy. Instead, we have a business strategy for a digital world. So I love that. That's our chief digital and technology officer. This is the viewpoint, right? So we don't develop a digital strategy. We have a business strategy. And it's a digital world out there. So we have to make sure that we enable our business strategy with digital capabilities. So, that's our focus. So we have the whole world is evolving and becoming much more digitally enabled, healthcare among the world, actually within the world. And at Pfizer, we have what we call the purpose blueprint. And so that defines the priorities, the business priorities. So what we do from a digital perspective is to look at opportunities to support and accelerate our business priorities.
Well, that's really interesting. So what is you said part of your job is involved with AI and machine learning. So maybe, how is that playing into the work that Pfizer is doing to bring new drugs to market? And maybe where do you see that going in the next 3 to 5 years? So where are we today and where's it going?
So as I'm sure you know, AI, ML is now very, very popular all across the world and in every industry. It plays a key role in every step of our drug discovery and development process. So as I mentioned earlier, from early discovery through to, from identifying potential targets for disease intervention, designing the best therapeutic agent, whether it be small molecule, large molecule, antibody, gene therapy, cell therapy, whatever is the best therapeutic, to designing and executing clinical trials, to making sure that we have diverse populations in our clinical trials, to geographically distributed as well, looking at manufacturing. We talked about manufacturing already, distribution of the drug, how to make sure that we distribute it to all the areas that it needs to be at, monitoring and real time getting the information to get it to the destination and get it to healthcare providers and to patients as fast as possible. I also mentioned that we use it in all of our support functions as well, in our people experience, in finance, in a quality organization. It really is embedded across the entire pipeline.
Well, that's really interesting. My listening audience can't see you as we're recording this, but in your background, there's a saying, "Science will win." That's really interesting. What does that mean to you and to Pfizer?
So I'm not 100% certain when that slogan started. I think it was during the pandemic, and it was during the time when a lot of people were concerned about the pandemic and what will happen. And our focus was on science to make sure that we understand how the virus works, to understand how we can stop the virus, how we can not only develop a vaccine, but also develop a therapeutic. And it probably was something that kept everybody going. Focus on the science, science will win. And it became a slogan. We actually have banners with T-shirts, mugs that say "Science will win." I was garb I bought when I first joined Pfizer for my first Christmas. All my family got "Science will win," T-shirts or mugs or something.
That's great. I had never seen that before, but I do actually like it quite a bit. It's such an upbeat message, especially from the marketplace that we work in. So I just want to kind of wrap up our conversation with, asking what your advice would be for a startup company. They're setting up a solid data foundation to support their research to then drive AI and machine learning. What advice could you give a startup company?
I would start by saying, expect the unexpected. So start early. And start early and start with the end in mind. So before as you're thinking about what do you need to do with the data you've collected, think about not just the infrastructure for the data you have today, but think about the infrastructure for the data that you're going to have tomorrow and the day after. So what types of data will you have? What parameters will you have? What are you going to be looking to do with the data? What partnerships are you looking to have? And having said all of that, I also need to add, don't try to boil the ocean. So keep that in mind, not so that you can deliver, the ultimate solution that you might not need for 5 years, but actually so that what you're building for today and the way that you're using the data today is set up for tomorrow and the day after and 5 years from now, so you can build on the strategy. And know that your tech stack will be out of date in 3 years at best. So be prepared for that, so that you can actually be moving forward and have something that is sustainable. And you don't have to build it all yourself. There's plenty of folks that you can partner with to use solutions that already exist and actually only build on top of them.
Well, that's fantastic. Anastasia, thank you so much for your insights, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And we will see you at BioIT World. You are one of the keynote speakers. I want to make sure that everybody knows who, if you are attending. you can hear Anastasia live in one of the opening keynote I think you got, which is a real coveted spot.
I
So
think it is, yeah, Tuesday afternoon.
for all of you attending BioIT World, make sure you get there early.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, Stan. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, thank you too.